All right, we should be all set. All right, Mr. Rao.
Okay, I would like to call to our meeting. 1 second. Facilities for May 4th, 2021. Being the time is, what is that, about 5:55, we're about 10 minutes behind the posted time. Like to call to order, and I don't see a pledge of allegiance on there, so I will skip the pledge of allegiance because it's not on there. Discussion and possible action on minutes. We have the minutes attached to the packet from our last meeting, which was January. If there's any comments or changes, issues. No? Pat in your car. Any
Nope.
comment? Motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes. So thank you, Carla.
I'll second it.
Since it's a committee, we actually don't have to have. It's okay though. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Because we have a much smaller group, we can call the roll for these, and then that way Mr. Reed doesn't have to worry about driving with one hand. So Mr.
I'm not
Brown,
driving, so it's okay.
Mr. Brown, Ms. Cardozo, Ms. Eichler, yes, and Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Perfect.
So our next item is public comment. I don't know if there was any public comment received by 2 o'clock.
No, there was no public comment received by 2 o'clock.
And so then we have a facilities project update, and we're starting with the stadium project and the change order first.
So we're going to invite a couple of individuals to our meeting. Obviously, Mr. Martoni's here. He will help walk us through a bit of that. Andrew Dijak, who is from Field Turf, is here. You all might remember him from back when he gave presentations before the field was approved. And then we also have Kevin Castellatro. He will be talking about item 4C on our agenda. So they are all part of our meeting this evening. And so I will turn this part over to both Terry and Steve.
Okay, well, if you've driven through Amity or walked up there, you'll see there's quite a bit of work going on in the field, really making some progress on the stadium side, as well as starting to make plans for the ADA walkway being put into field 3. So Andrew, Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything before we ask Andrew to go through the update.
No, Andrew, good update. Like you said, there's been a lot of work done, and we're moving along quite well, and seems to be ahead of schedule, and everything's looking good up there.
You want me to talk, Terry?
Yeah, Andrew, if you could tell us how the project's going from your point of view.
Sure. Yeah, it's going, knock on wood, very well. We are almost completely done with demolition. The previous lights were taken down. The track was recently milled completely, and all of the topsoil has been removed. So we're down at subgrade throughout the whole site, which is real good news. The subgrade is very firm, and we won't have any issue building up from there whatsoever. We've also put in about 75% of the collector pipe system, and in case that was stone. The reason we've only done 75% is because we have about 25% is actually under where the existing track is. So that track portion has to be excavated before we finish. We're also digging conduit currently for the electrical system, as well as the AV system, and then also digging the foundations for the lighting poles. Next couple of weeks, like the 2-week look ahead, we're going to be finishing the foundations, bringing in stone for the sub base, and then also laying cables for the new post tension track. Next week we'll be grading the ADA walkway And then after the walkway is paved, or excuse me, after the walkway is graded, we'll be laying concrete down that area as well. So the ADA walkway will be done in approximately 2 weeks.
So can you tell us what your thoughts are on the entrance where we approved the change order last year on, last year, it felt like.
Like last year. Yeah, so there was a thought about redoing the asphalt or redoing the surface between the fence line and where the track is. So we took a square footage of the area and then quoted an asphalt price, along with concrete running. If you're going into the stadium, I'm not good with north, south, east, and west, but if you go into the stadium, the bleachers on the right-hand side would have a concrete walkway as well. So we made the proposal, but when we made the proposal, we told Terry and the school that we would do it either with asphalt or with concrete. So it was a choice of the school to be able to do it either way. So what we did was we took everything from the fence line, took a direct shot over to the concession stand along the basically the main entrance, trucking entrance to the fence line on the other side, and then down to the track. So the whole area will be redone in either asphalt or concrete. And the benefit of the concrete is it looks aesthetically tremendously better, and it's going to last a lot longer, and put a nice border around the field. So I think we're moving forward with the concrete. I'm pretty sure, and that work will be done towards the end of the project. So basically, you'd be driving in from asphalt area, you hit the fence on one side where there's going to be a potential or future paver area, then the concrete, then the track, and on the other side it's asphalt, the concrete, and then the track. So it's gonna look pretty sharp in my opinion.
And part of the good news on the concrete is that we are able to install it for the same price as the asphalt, because, and Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way I understand it, because there will already be concrete work on site to do the track, this area won't be post-tension, but we can just use those same people to do the concrete area, which is what makes it price out to the same as the asphalt, because Field Turf would actually have to contract with an asphalt company to do the asphalt part of that patio area. And so that's why it ends up that the concrete is just as economically friendly as the asphalt, but we get for a longer period of time.
Right, 100% right. So we would have to hire a sub and do just specific asphalt work in that area. And for that small square foot area, the asphalt price was tremendously high. So you're exactly right. So we already have our concrete folks on site. So doing that is really not that big of an adder for us. Did you want me to touch on the change orders as well, or?
I think we have a question first on the
Can I ask a
committee.
question first? I think it sounds great. Concrete sounds, it makes sense to do it. I know that the track is going to be rubberized on top. And is there any thought, has anyone thought of extending that rubberized look into that patio area to sort of mash it together? It would also prevent sort of cracks and other issues in the future. It would protect it a little bit longer as well. So I don't know if that's something that's been considered.
So
When you say patio area, which area? The one where which area are you talking about?
The restrooms there, sort of.
yeah, I think he's thinking in front of the concession stand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll weigh in a little bit. The part that Andrew mentioned slightly, but we haven't explored much, is kind of sort of on the entrance side from the Sim sign. So, because there's two entrances into the track, there's kind of the construction entrance and then the Sim sign entrance. Mr. Goodwin is working with the athletic boosters to turn that into a paver area with paver tiles that people can purchase and donate and have their name on. So that way we have all of that paved out. And so I think the transition from the paver to the concrete, especially since there's a concrete sidewalk that would then go around to the home field bleachers, that all blends rather nicely from the paver to the sidewalk. The other thing too is that, and Andrew can probably talk about this, but it's not going to be just track and then immediately concrete. You're going to have the track rails that are going to probably separate the track from the concrete area in front of the concession stand.
Okay.
And that we can avoid. I think that's part of regulation on how you build the track. Andrew, I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention about that, but.
No, I think you're right. I think adding the track surface in that area would be a little bit costly, but and not that it's a bad idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it might. I mean, the concrete's going to wear just as well, and I think the aesthetic of it is going to be no issue. But there will be what Jen's trying to say. I think is expansion joints between the actual post tension part of the track, and then also the area of the concrete walkway. So it may be difficult to cover those expansion joints with the track surface, because for concrete that's that large of an area, they're fairly sizable going in and out. Now there's not a safety hazard, there's not a tripping hazard. There's a foam inside there, but to cover them with a track surface, it just could inhibit it a little bit. So I think the plan, we're open to ideas, but I think the plan going forward, especially in that area, I'd like to keep that set if we could.
And the paver area would not be concrete, it would be pavers. They put them in blank now and then later on or something in.
Yes.
Right, not a part on, it's not under our scope per se, but they would butt up against the concrete. So it would be like Jen was saying, it would be asphalt, then the paver section, whatever size and configuration you would want there, and then you instantly hit the concrete.
I was just thinking of limiting, of bringing down the number of transitions. You've got a lot of different
Yes.
transitional materials, and if you could do it sort of seamless, it would, I think it would look nice to blend it. And it would longer again with the rubber on top, because it keeps the water out, keeps the freezing out, keeps the expansion and a lot of that out of there as well. So just a thought. Anyway, thank you. Go on.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, guys.
Are there, before we go to the change orders, does anybody from
No.
facilities have other questions about the project while we have Andrew on with us? All good? Okay, Mr. Brown, sure.
You mentioned the base, and I know we talked about an 8-inch fill of material, or 9-inch, sorry, I think 9, right? So right now the track is the field is looking still pretty high. I see the drainage pipes going in. I see rock going in. So from the old field to the new field, what's the change in height, roughly?
Yeah, so I think it's like an 8-inch change of height. So what's going to happen is where the track's going to get laid, and you're going to have a 4 inches that come down off of the track onto where the curb is, where the turf is going to attach to the curb. So although it looks like it's over a foot of depth now, that's going to decrease down to 9 inches, because you have a 4-inch, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, shelf, where the turf is going to attach right into the track. So it looks a little deeper than it is now, but where the subgrade is subgrade, we go up 9 inches, that's the field, and then the track shelf comes down another 4 inches, the turf attaches to it, and it's all one level surface. But from new, I'd have to double check, but I think from new grade to new grade, I think it's about 8 inches.
Right, higher,
Correct.
8 inches.
Correct.
That's that way. So just, again, taking that into consideration, because there's the buildings aren't moving,
Yes.
the bleachers aren't moving, and other things. So there will be this sort of like dome look almost of the field. Just
a little bit. It's going to be imperceptible to the human eye, but it's on a 0.5% or 0.5% grade. So from where you're standing in the middle is going to be higher than the actual curve. So you're talking about the high point versus the low point by the bleachers. And although it is a height difference, when you look at it, it will be imperceptible, look flat.
And at one point when the field was crowned, there probably was a height difference, but
Yeah.
over that crowning has disappeared, so it didn't look that way as much or feel that way anymore.
Right,
But
Right.
probably 50 years ago when they first crowned the field, that's probably exactly what it did.
Right, so originally with the grass fields, you're at about a 2% slope. So we're cutting that down to approximately 0.5%, like 0.49% slope. So we drastically cut out the crown of the field, but it's still present, but you can't, if you built it flat, it almost looked like you have a dip in it. So the pitch helps with the water, carrying the water off the field, but then it also helps with the visually because it'll actually look flat, even though it's crowned.
Besides the crown, there still is a height difference of about 8 inches from where the old field was to where the new field will be.
That's from center field to edge. I'd have to check where we go edge to edge, but I think edge to edge, it's not that far, it's not that high. I think it might be 3 or 4 inches, but I can double check on that. I don't have the plans in front of me.
Like I said, it was just observation from driving by from where we are, and now that the rock is coming in, that it's going to be higher, because I can see what was taken away roughly.
Yeah, I would say you're not wrong on that, and I can get you that specific height, but visually, the way we blend it in, there will be no difference. There will be no tripping hazard. There will be no difference. It'll all be blended in together.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Are you sure? No more questions, Mr. Rao? Okay.
I don't get, we only have one Thursday so far, so.
I know.
This Thursday, we'll meet again. So, okay, Andrew, if you could go on to the change order. The committee has a copy of the change order in front of them. And the only markup I did was changing the 10% to 5%.
Right.
We discussed.
Are we going to there's two that we're discussing?
We're just.
Which?
So we're just doing the price increase one?
Okay, so yeah, the price increase, it was something that we discussed because originally we had the project slated for last year. Even though, we did talk initially that if the project did move, that we would have a very slight cost increase. We weren't trying to make really any money off of it, but we priced the job very aggressively, and that there were going to be price increases, which there were. Our standard markup for any change order is at least 10%, but we talked with Terry and we dropped that down to 5%. And any kind of construction material from last year to this year is drastically increased. Anything made of oil has increased about 30 or 40%. So any piping material, any plastic material from the electrical side, any of the precious metals like copper or steel, and then anything that we make the cables, or not make them, but we buy the cables, all those copper pieces, they just skyrocketed. So we because it went from year to year, we had to absorb more material costs, no labor costs, but all material costs. And those material costs that we marked them up 5% and passed them along. We didn't want to do it. We're not really making any money off of it. We had to pass those along. But we were kind of upfront about that. If it moves a year, prices usually go up. I was actually surprised at how little they did go up. I think right now, if we priced that again, it would be a lot higher, to be honest with you. It's just any construction material now currently is on back order, and or price increases it's unbelievable right now.
And then I think correct me, Andrew, did we talk about that there will be a third change order coming?
So this is what we had, like one. So the first one was the increased conduit for the data. That was already, I think, taken care of, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Then we had 2, which was what we just talked about, the year-over-year increase in materials. And then 3 would be the either asphalt or concrete apron. Those would be the 3.
Okay.
And I think we have documentation on all those, but if you need anything else, Terry, we're absolutely happy to provide it.
So the field was approved, what, in November of 19? Is that when we approved it?
No.
As, so
When I say we, I
referendum,
mean the district.
that, I think the
Voters.
July
It was-
facilities committee moved it forward to the board.
And I think the board was either, September, or October, because we had to work with the timeline of when you can do all the work for the referendum once it's then moved forward.
Right, so the referendum was when?
The referendum was in December.
December of 19.
Yes.
Right, okay. And then we were supposed to start work in the summer of 20,
Correct.
but we were not allowed to because we were being sued, right, or threatened to be sued.
Yes, it was in an appeals
An
process.
appeals process. Okay, so what we're saying is that small group of residents or whoever it was ends up, it's $59,000 more that the taxpayers of the 3 towns have to pay because of that. Is that correct?
Correct in the sense that it's still coming out of the money that we bonded for and they would pay for it. It eats into any enhancements we would be able to do with money left at the end of the project.
Sure, and any contingencies we would have that we have left over would go towards capital improvements for something else that we would normally have to put as an expense or bond.
Yes,
Okay, so it is costing the
Yeah.
district $59,000 so far, plus the legal fees. Okay, just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, the only other thing I had in my notes, Terry, and we can discuss it, or Jen, now or later, was the break in the cease and desist that happened. That was for, which not, again, we're not in the business of, we'd rather not do it, but we had to pull off a site for, I think, 5 working days, I think, or 4 working days, something like that. So that's the other one that we discussed. That's I had it in my notes. I don't know if we've given you documentation on that or not, but if we have, then we will going forward.
So the mobilization costs that they had in place, they had heavy equipment being brought to the site, they had guys set up, lined up, and then the cease and desist caused a delay of 4 or 5 days.
Right, they actually started work on a Monday and
Yeah.
then had to stop. So the cost of getting that equipment there and those.
and then not using it,
Not
and then
using
having
it.
to use it a
Right,
little longer.
right,
Yes.
so that's another cost we're gonna say.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
So I think if we can ask the committee to make a motion, I'll bring it to the AFC and the BOE next week. But it would be helpful if it had all of the facilities committee.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve this change order
And bring it forward to the full
and
board.
bring it forward to the board.
Perfect. Thank you, Carla.
Anybody want to second that?
We don't need a second because we're in committee.
No.
So remember, it can go much faster. So any further discussion on the change order?
I just wanted to check, when I see the field equipment or the field base, is that, are those the increases for the lines and hardware and poles and net and what have you?
I have the same question. When I'm looking at the last 2 attachments, it just
So
doesn't
the
match.
J Pro Sports.
Yes,
So what they're showing you is I believe their original estimate and then the new estimate, because there's a difference of $3,000, $3,900 for the equipment.
between the 29,176 and
And the 33.
Okay, just because I can't do math that quickly and I can't even see
Yeah,
those
I was gonna
numbers.
ask the same question, so that's why
So
I
that
was
is a
guessing that.
39, the difference
Difference
those
between the two.
purchase orders. Or estimates.
Okay, well, good thing we didn't use wood to build the field. We just made it a lot more. Okay, all right, any other discussion? I had the same question. If not, I'll call the vote,
Mr. Brown?
yes?
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes,
Ms. Eichler?
Yes,
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Great. So, the change order, anything else on the field?
Did you have anything else on field 3, Andrew? You kind of touched on that sidewalk, so.
Just that within the next 2 weeks, we will have we have the sidewalk prepped and ready for concrete, and it's a 1-day pour for the concrete. So we're estimating 2 to 2.5 weeks to be 100% completed with that portion of the project.
Are you doing it at the same time you're doing the other concrete on the other side or a different pour?
It will be different. It's a smaller area, so it's only gonna take it'll be one truck for a couple hours.
And I actually pushed them to complete it so that it would be done in time for where we plan or anticipate hosting eighth grade promotion ceremonies. If they're held outside, that we would have the ADA walkway to the bleachers. So that's why they have to do it now because I asked them to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, and any questions on that?
So Andrew, you're welcome to stay on, but I'm assuming that you probably would like to exit the meeting. So we appreciate your time and some of us will see you on Thursday.
Yeah, on Thursday. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, let me know, but I appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to here at Orange, our drainage field.
Yes. So we're scheduled to improve drainage for the field out here this summer. A few weeks ago, I met with Kevin Caposalatro, who's our grounds contractor. We went back there, reviewed the field. Probably about 16, 17 years ago, we had a company, TM Wright, come out. They did a French drain system to help with the drainage there at that time. A few years after, Kevin's company installed additional drainage at that time. That was roughly around 15 years ago. And at this point, with 15 years gone by, it's time to add more drainage and help improve things over there. So to better let us know what needs to be done and give us some advice, Kevin's with us today. So I could let Kevin speak onto his expertise and let us know what he feels needs to be done out there.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, so obviously the orange field, it's always very wet. It's kind of been a swamp that the hollow and all. We had some runoff from the hills and all. We did the drainage. It definitely helped. It's kind of run its course. So we're need to improve it basically. There's a couple options we could go with. One of them is it's a turfus material, which is kind of it's a clay that's expanded. It's what I use on our baseball and softball fields to dry them out. When we have the wet fields and all, you kind of could just top dress that over the entire grass field. If you aerate the field first to kind of punch some holes, get that material into the grass. It's a very, it's not a very invasive process. You can basically be on the field the next day and not even realize you did major work to it. You can put tons of it, like a trailer loads 20 tons, just spread that over the whole thing. We've done similar projects at other schools and had good, very good success with it. Other options would be to really, dig up the field, run some new drainage systems and all that, it's going to be down for a while, obviously major work, and all. So those are definitely options. So it's kind of, different ways to go, I guess. So.
And what's the longevity of option, we'll call it option 1 versus option 2?
That turf is going to stay there forever. It's a clay that they kind of expand. So it just absorbs the water. It also holds the water too. So it actually, for my baseball fields, it actually helps keep the fields damp when we have dust and all. So that's not going anywhere. So that's going to basically be in the soil forever. It's something too that we could always, just add on to. So we do, a trail of 20 tons this year, 2-3 years, we keep going to it if we need to add more. So, that's going to it's going to stay in there forever. The fields we've done, the one we did probably about 10 years ago and haven't been back and, haven't had issues. So it's going to, it stays in there as long as forever, basically.
Do you have to reseed, or can you punch it in and work it in slowly and not have to reseed, or do you
Nope, you don't have to reseed at all. You aerate, which is always good to do anyway. So you get some holes, and then you kind of broadcast it, top dress it out. They're called manure spreaders, but you just dump it in there and it just kind of throws it out what the old farmers use, and it just kind of goes right over. you could use a big drag mat, kind of like what I use for the, you know, the baseball and softball fields again, and just kind of drag it over just to kind of get it into the holes and into the low areas. The benefit with that too is, you know, me being there so much, I kind of know the field, so I know what areas are wetter, and also I can kind of concentrate on, you know, the back right corner is always always wet, foul territory of baseball's wet, so, you know, we could kind of go heavier on those areas and lighter on other areas too.
And you did mention that the field out back is not even. There is some section that's higher than the other. So we would need more material in one section than the others.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, you know, it's a field that's, you know, no irrigation. You know, being in middle school, you can't really, you know, use any of your chemicals, pesticides there anyway anymore. So, you know, it's just kind of big grass field that, you know, kind of is what it is. So to improve the drainage by just adding the stuff is, you know, makes a lot of sense to me, to be honest.
Is there one, is there option 1 or option 2 better or worse? Are they kind of equally effective?
I mean, there's a big cost difference between the two. But they both definitely work. Like I said, we've done them both. You know, option 2's kind of run its course there. So, you know, option 1 definitely lasts longer. You know, if you really go in with some serious, you know, excavators and stuff and really add some drainage, you know, you could definitely help it out. But, you know, that's quite the process for a field that, you know, gets some gym classes, use it, and, you know, not, you know, we play soccer there, but by the fall, it's the spring is the worst of it too. So, you know, and the big key is, you know, like I said, it's ready to go the next day.
I mean, even if you put, I mean, you could decide, you could put the clay on top now, and in 3 years say, you know, we really should do the drains, and so the clay would still be there, it would still be part of the field. It's not gonna go anywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been talking to Mr. Goodwin too about, you know, adding some on some of our varsity soccer fields gets, you know, had some wet areas too. So we may, you know, talk to him about adding some, you know, some of that too. So it's an option where, you know, could definitely either add more of it if we see it working a little bit, but not quite, you know, we didn't add enough, or, you know, yeah, like you said, go a complete different drainage system. We could always do later down the line too.
And you said that the clay field holds water, so does that pose a risk in winter? Does it freeze?
I mean, all grass fields kind of freeze in the winter, but there's no standing in the winter. There's not usually standing water on it. So, yeah.
It doesn't, is what I'm thinking.
I'm sorry, say that again?
As much, I'm sure, in the winter, but it doesn't become an ice rink.
No,
Does
but
it?
no, but if you want to make an ice rink, I could do that too.
Don't let him offer that, because I'm afraid that somebody would take him up on that, so. But thanks a lot.
Yeah. No.
Can we, instead of the clay, can you get that moon sand stuff? You know, that moon sand material that's sort of like hydrophobic, you know, it repels.
Yeah.
Use that. No, I think it makes sense to try the less costly, you know, option first. It doesn't hurt us long run if we decide to, and we could see how it works.
It's a benefit, like even if, I mean, fields that don't have drainage, it actually helps with compaction too, because this clay kind of doesn't let the soil compact too. So it's a benefit of fields regardless, if, you know, so it's not a bad thing if it, you know, to do.
It's an overall improvement on the field.
Improvement on the field, it's less invasive. You can use the field the next day.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have a month of tearing the field up, recovery time, you know, the drainage and all that, so.
And then we monitor it and see, and, you know, see what it looks like, how the use has been, and then go from there.
And it's the least expensive option.
And it's the least expensive by a lot. You're just dumping dirt basically and working it in. And then dragging it, like smoothing it out.
So are we at the point where we actually got a quote for option 1? Or, I mean, I just wondered where it fits in terms of the budget, because we did put money aside for this field.
We have rough numbers. think you said, Kevin, it was about $5.50 a ton. So we're looking at, I think we talked today, we're looking at what, 60 tons, it was like 22,000?
Yeah, it's 60 is a good amount too. So that, that would definitely help. Again, it's like going back to what Andrew was talking about before, the trucking and stuff, the material, that's getting the product is the cost, but yeah, and then, to put it down really isn't much at all. So yeah, that's again, it's, a trailer loads 20 tons. So at least you need at least 20 tons, 60 is great, 40 is better than 20, and then 20 will be something. So that's kind of, we could get hard numbers and kind of see where all that stuff falls too.
40 tons would be the 22.
I think we had a placeholder, if I'm not mistaken, of like 64,000 or something for
Yes.
the traditional drainage system.
60
somewhere
or
like
64,
60 or 64,
Yeah, I think it was
something in that neighborhood.
60,000.
Okay.
But when we look back on what we spent the last time we did work on it, it
Yeah.
was 64,000.
Wow.
So just
Was
time difference.
Terry, was that in Orange or was that in Bethany? Do you know?
I thought it was in Orange, but
'Cause I know, I believe Bethany had some more major work done too. But I'm not, I know work was done at both of them too. So Bethany was more of the excavating stuff at that time too.
But one of the fields at least had work on that with drainage, that was 64,000. And it was, I think, the first year starts in probably 15 years ago. So.
Big change. And the funding for this, we're talking about using end of the year funds for this?
No, this
or
is part of the bond project?
This is part of the bond?
No, I'm.
No,
I'm
this is
confused.
part
Yeah,
of
approval.
it's our operational budget for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Operational.
capital,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if we set aside, if we do the 1%
Gotcha.
transfer into capital, it will be in the capital fund, but it's part of it. Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm working on a lot of different.
A lot of different.
Working on
different
board
routes.
today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think even if it puts it in a better shape for a couple of years just to assess, and then we can look at it again. I mean, even if we did it now and then did some later on, let the grass come back up, and then, you could do another batch in a couple of years in theory, and then still be at the point of French drains, which are always going to clog with silt and eventually. But the clay, you're going to build up. It's because right now all the water funnels in, and there's a stream at the back end that shoots right into it, and it's kind of hard to overcome that. The way it is. So build it up a little bit, give it a little bit of a. I mean, I would think we should move towards that. Would be my thought. So get a hard bid and then you can move it forward. And plan it. And I don't know if you do 40 or 60, because you could half that. I mean, you do 30,000, that's 60 ton. Right.
Yeah.
You
So
want a motion?
we were intending to ask the board to waive the bid process and work with Mr. Capsulato, the current groundskeeper, because of his history with the field and understanding the field. So just to be transparent about that,
Yeah.
when we have the firm quote, we were going to go forward to the board and ask to approve the project price and waive the bid.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking a bid. I was thinking just a firm quote. But and the reason is it's really you're paying for the materials. It's a fixed.
Yeah.
It's kind of like buying
Commodity.
rock or fill or I mean you kind of know what the going price is for mulch. And so it's not to diminish the amount of work, but there is the work to put it in, but it's really the bulk of it is buying the material.
And yes, and again, like going back to the concrete kind of, if you do 60 compared to 40 to 20, the labor isn't going to be, it's a lot less for 60 than it evens out kind of.
And it's still a tractor going back and forth, 100 times.
Right, but everything's on site and it's, if you're there to spread 20 or 60, it's, it's not going to be that much of an increase labor wise.
I just have one other question. Just because you know the field so well, and that's how you know a good, landscaper or turf person is you know the land. Is it possible that over time, if you notice that that particular area is still particularly wet, that you might be able to address a particular area with drainage as opposed to just adding the clay? I was just wondering if some combination, longer term solution would be.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. The kind of the back right corner, if you come down the driveway there, that's, I mean, I was there today, actually. There were standing puddles there. I mean, we did have a decent amount of rain last night, but those are definitely our, the worst area of everything. So yeah, that's something where, we go heavier with the clay material. We also could even if we have to bring in, a couple loads of topsoil or something, just to kind of, because it is, a little bit of a valley there, bring in some material just to kind of raise that area up a little bit, throw some seed down there. That's an option, too. Concentrate on the really, really bad area. That area is kind of out of the way from, the sport areas there. Baseball doesn't affect, softball doesn't affect. And like I said, the fall usually isn't too bad. If we get a real heavy rain, it might collect there a little bit, but not as much as it does now in this time of year.
Well, I think I would be in favor of just kind of remaining open to that, depending on what the numbers come in at. If it's possible to just do a little extra to help that one area. I know that just as we all know in our own yards, we know where our, maybe you guys, some of those wet spots. I live on a Spring Valley road, so acutely aware of where the water is. So we've had to do quite a bit of drainage, so I completely empathize. And it does take a concerted effort to make a difference.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Castellaccio? Because we'll have him up early in the morning fixing our fields and mowing the lawns and everything like that. So I don't want to keep him too long either.
It's gonna be raining tomorrow. I might get to sleep in a little bit.
There you go. It's a good day then. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for joining the meeting. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, moving on, telephone systems.
So we have the telephone system on the technology 5-year forecast. And it's scheduled for 22, 23 and out. And I know when we were in the budget process, I think we alluded to the fact that it's kind of like we hold our breath because the technology changes so fast and it's outdated. And if it fails, it's obviously an emergency system. We cannot let it, fail. We have to be able to be up and running. So what we're anticipating is there's also a new round of security grant funding that came out from the state of Connecticut that Mr. DeRosa, Mr. Martoni and I, and Ms. Kovalik attended a webinar. And the telephone system would be eligible for reimbursement. So roughly each town has its own reimbursement rate, but if you figure about 30% is in the area, they're all a little bit over 30%. So if we go forward with this and designate, the 1% and part of the end of year funds, we stand that we could recoup a third of that funds. Now it's subject to state grant approval. It could get approved in one town and not the other, but it's certainly worth the ask since we're going to be doing it a year out. So we just wanted to bring that to the facilities committee that we will be bringing it. The grant is due June 15th, so we'll be bringing it to the board. We don't have to actually have the project done, or even bid by June 15th. We just have to submit the grant proposal, but we will be including the telephone system in part of the 1% has, so.
Remember, is that just the high school? I apologize, because you
No,
mentioned
no, it's the
towns, so
entire
both
district.
middle schools and the
Yes.
high school.
Yes.
And that's why you have to actually write a grant for each of the 3 towns?
You submit one grant, but you have to separate all the projects by
Okay.
building,
Got it.
and then
Makes
they'll
sense. Okay.
appropriate the funds by that.
And was it the 50,000? I'm doing that from memory. I don't have it in front of me. 50,000?
So the phone system in total, we estimate to be about 150,000.
Oh, okay, so that's what it can be done.
If we get a third, we could get 50,000. So.
A lot of money though. It's tough with the phones since
Yeah.
They're phasing phones out in so many places, but with school, you really need to have phones, because there's no other way to communicate with all the different rooms, right?
And that is the exact point that makes it eligible for the security grant is
Well, no, thank
connection into
goodness.
the classroom.
Because there's not much else of an option.
Yeah.
Creepy in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the systems that we're looking at, or the system we're looking at, does it give us different functionality than we have now, or is it more just?
Those are Mr. DeRosa questions. My assumption is yes, and I think that the difference is looking at a cloud, and this is gonna be way past me, a cloud-based system, or we'll call it the not cloud-based system.
Yeah.
So we have two options to begin with, and those would be different than what we currently have. Or at least one of them would be different than what we currently have. But I think the challenge with what we have is the whole system and the technical support for it has disappeared.
Yeah.
So if it goes down, there, no pun intended, there literally is nobody to call to come fix it. And so then we're just completely out with no phone system whatsoever, except I think the one copper line that goes into each school.
I was gonna ask if it's part of our like networking and tied into that, yeah, except for the one line.
I don't think it's part of our computer network. It's actually separate and, but it connect, and it connects in the way an office phone system would. So, direct dials to the extensions, that we have that internal component as well as the external piece.
So the state won't necessarily look to see that we have a vendor selected or specific, but that we have clearly identified the cost, but more importantly, that the matching funding from the board is there for the project.
And we have that amount in the budget, or is it in capital? I don't remember.
What we would be asked for from the end of year fund, so if we transfer the 1%.
I mean, it's part of security, really, and do it, just whatever we can do that has the longest, life of the system, which, I mean, it's almost, you almost feel like you want to go back to copper because we can almost fix that, and run that. But one chip, could go bad, and then you've got to, maybe find somebody to replace it. So, yeah, the longest life is what we're looking for. So that kind of makes sense. Okay, that sounds good. HVAC projects.
HVAC projects, we're moving forward. In contact with Save More. The submittals have been going to the architect for review, and submittals are going back and forth. Units are ordered, parts are ordered, so we're on schedule to start roughly around June 9th, 10th to get the project going.
Okay.
We're working on trying to get into the wrestling gym to do the cooling coils in that area. We're trying to get in there this month. We're just working on schedules with the principal and figure when we can schedule that. Everything's moving ahead of schedule, or moving on schedule, I should say, and we're in good shape. We've been communicating a couple times a week just with the submittals and bringing vendors in and just looking at last minute details. So we're in good shape there.
Paving, and then we go back to the roof.
Yeah. So the paving, we're going for phase 3 of the paving project. We're gonna work that into when field turf is done with the track project.
Right.
So we're doing the last bit of the parking lot, which is north of the tennis courts up North Beach Road. So it's gonna be that junior parking area, that strip, the paved area around the concession stand. So it'll be that area, it'll be those little islands and whatnot in there, the curbs, the sidewalks. So we're just wrapping up getting the scope of work put together, and we should have that out to bid by Friday. And, look for bid opening probably the end of the night. And again, that'll probably start, we're thinking somewhere around July 14th, if not sooner, depends on when the filter is wrapped up. With the heavy machinery and trucks and everything, so.
Right.
We can start first week of July will be good.
And that'll depend on the price of
Yes, yeah, the full scope will depend on
Which is
price.
been creeping up.
Yes.
I think the other thing that we'll do is, a few years ago, our former board member, Amy Esposito, made an ask to angle the parking spaces in that particular section of the lot because it was difficult for our less experienced drivers to safely get in and out. So it may end up kind of shaving off a couple of the parking spots that we have. We have to kind of look at that, but we will ask the paving contractor to look into that angled parking, which hopefully will create a slightly safer environment in that back strip as the kids arrive and depart from school.
I'll tell Amy because she's been asking.
We have not forgotten yet.
But you do notice a lot of kids come and back in so they can do the fast getaway.
Absolutely, yes.
Which.
Well, and we will have to teach all of them what it means when you park at an angle, like which way you should and should not exit.
Right.
So,
And
but we'll work on that.
the new thing I've seen, which I've been surprised with, is the line of cars coming in and you have the kid late for class who decides to jump out of the line, zoom down to the parking spot and then park. So I've noticed it twice now. So just in case you guys, check the cameras or whatever, it'd be pretty easy to know which car it was and who was doing it. And just sort of have a little word with them.
And the other thing that I've asked Mr. Martoni to explore as part of the paving is checking with UI to see if we have an option of getting a couple of charging stations. Because while we don't yet have people who have vehicles that, well, we may have people who need to have vehicles that need to be charged, but we don't actually have a spot for them. But if we could somehow, there's actually a recommendation from Mr. Zioli, who managed to have some put in place through a cooperative agreement for some of the parking areas in Orange. When he suggested it, I thought it sounded like it could be a good idea for us to have at the high school. So we'll explore that option with UI. We certainly don't want to be paying for kids and staff members to charge their cars, but if we can figure out how we can work that out. Again, another thing we can consider while we're paving the parking lot.
And that'll all tie in again with parking spots. We'll designate a few parking spots for the charging stations. And even with the new walkway for field 3, we'll designate a few of those spots for ADA. So that'll all kind of tie together with the whole paving project. All that.
Did I hear a vicious rumor that the tent that is going in the back field will be driving large metal stakes through our brand new parking lot over there?
Mr. Martoni?
I was opposed to that idea. But yes.
Yeah.
The original idea was to have this tent up on the field, tennis courts.
Right.
And having a tent on the field for a month straight
Will kill the field.
would kill the field.
Yeah.
There is no good spot out front to do it. So unfortunately, it is going to go out back on the new pavement. The company is filling the holes back up when they're done, and there's a material that they use. So as they claim, you'll never see it. It's like it never happened. Right? So we did address that.
And there are islands that maybe they can tie into that. they can use
That is
for-
correct. Yeah, at least one side of the tent, we are looking at the back parking lot to the grass to minimize the impact. Yes. But unfortunately, we had no choice for placement. And that's where we ended up doing it.
I felt a little twang of pain thinking of a large, 1-inch steel rod being rammed into the relatively new pavement back there. But it's unprecedented times and yes, calls for unprecedented action.
I
So
can't wait to see this theatrical presentation in the big tent. Feels sort of like the country, right?
There's a big time.
well, we get the animals in, we do a circus too. Have or actually, maybe that's the problem. That will be the circus.
Mr. Graff.
So we're back to roof project then, on G.
Yes. Looking at my notes here. So the roof project is for the middle schools, here in Orange and here in Bethany. One of the things in discussion with the roofing contractor that we use, Tremco, the upper gym roofs here, there is no permanent ladder access to get up to those roofs. The way it works now is you have to get an extension ladder up to this roof, pull another ladder up, and then get up to the upper roof. And after discussing it, it's not the safest or best option, so Trumco gave us a quote to get ladders installed on the side of the roof to get up to the upper roofs. The other issue is there are no gutters on the upper roof right now. So we discussed options of putting gutters up for both schools to help the drainage on the upper roofs. And then from what we could see, if you look outside, a lot of the paint's peeling off the wall on that upper roof. And that's all due to lack of drainage, lack of gutters, just the water running down. It's just ruining everything. So they actually put together a 4-part proposal, if you will. It was for ladder access to the upper roofs at both schools. It was gutter systems at both schools for the upper roofs. And then it was also additional safety items. There was safety railings, there was safety walkways. So we kind of reviewed a couple options with Trumco. And in discussion right now with Terry and myself, we're thinking that at least for now, we should at least look at the ladder options and then look at other avenues for gutters and wall systems. These systems that Trumco proposed are a little steep. But the ladder option is reasonable.
What's the cost? Ballpark?
So right now,
We're not 2 ladders, right, basically.
2 ladders. So right now, the material pricing for the 2 ladders is $842.10 each. So it's $1684.20 for both ladders. Now, the way that he proposed it on the breakdown was he did a labor budget to install all items, which would be the ladders, the walkways, the railings, all that. It's a $77,700 for Bethany and $11,000 here for Orange. But again, that's for everything, so that could be negotiated.
The only thing I'll say is the concern, well, so 2 things. How often are you up on the, how often is somebody up on the upper roof?
It is not too often. It's more if there is an issue up there, we need to do any inspection. Roof leaks, Trumco's going up there when they do their inspections. And again, it's them pulling ladders up and doing it. Obviously, they're a roofing company, so they're a little bit more used to it than we are.
Right.
But, it doesn't hurt for us at least once a month, a couple times a year to go up there and inspect it and see what's going on. And right now, it's just, there's no way to do it.
The, 'cause I know other schools have had issues with, kids learn to climb.
Yes.
And they get up there, and then there's another ladder to go even higher, and now
Yes.
they're higher up than they would be. So I would hope it's some sort of a, I don't know.
Locking, and that's one of the
Correct,
discussions
yeah.
that we did have is, I said, is this a way that we could lock this ladder off so you cannot climb up? And he did say that there are options for that.
Right.
So that's something, we are gonna look into.
Right.
Exactly, that's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, because it's easy to get up to the first tier, and then this helps you get up to the second tier, right? Okay, I mean, I guess look into it, but it's,
I think, I don't know, those things sound like something you really, really, really want to think about and make sure that you are doing the right thing, because when I hear gutters, you have to have ladders, because if the gutters get full, then it defeats the whole purpose. I'm surprised with flat roofs that they're not integral. I'm kind of confused, but I'm not going to step in your sandbox on that one.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that there are no roof drains up there,
Yeah.
and there is nothing, for perimeter drain either, so.
Is it pitched to run off onto the lower roof?
That's what it's doing, is it's pitched, so it runs down that wall and onto the lower roof. So if you look at the wall, you can see where the paint's peeling and then it's just off, it doesn't look good.
Right.
So it needs to be addressed. They did give us 3 different wall options. There was, the paint option and caulking and whatnot. And then there was a metal clad wall system that they put up. And there was two different thoughts on that. One of them, it was like a corrugated metal, if you will, and wall panels. And one of them was exposed fasteners. One was hidden fasteners. But, it's not a cheap option by any stretch for this. I think the painting would probably be the better option. And it would probably help also to look at other contractors to
I mean, all you need is a lip, right? Sort of like that shoots it off
Mhm.
so that it doesn't drip down.
Yeah, even if you do the lip, or if, you do the gutters, downspouts, and then just repaint the wall and fix it, so that should help.
Half a ton of that clay, you just put that up
Put
there.
that up there, and that'll take care of everything, right?
Right, and you can play sports. Um,
Wow.
With a
Rooftop garden.
Okay, no, thank you. That's, take a look at that. That's, I think, probably makes sense, but again, it's a, it's a long-term benefit to the school. So as long as it's safe and it helps the paint issue. Acoustic project, that's the panels, right? And
Correct.
there's a change a little bit in the panels and.
Yes, we've contracted with Cody Acoustical. He came out back in March. He did an acoustical study of the gyms, and the acoustical study is finished. He has now the blueprints of the elevations and the layout of the room, the gyms, and the band room. And what he's doing now is putting together a proposal for different options for acoustical treatments in those areas. Just talked to him tonight, and he's saying he hopes to have the analysis done by the week's end, and then have a report to us by next week of what his recommendations are for acoustical panels. Those areas. Hopefully by next week, we should have something in hand from them. Work that from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to know yet. So we know what that looks like. And then the controller upgrade, we had some controllers that were hard to replace, right? Or an issue, a challenge to replace. We're looking for an upgrade on them.
Upgrading the controllers at the high school for the building BMS system, building management system for HVAC. They're just outdated system, outdated graphics, outdated controls. So we're looking at updating the graphics, updating some of the controllers and whatnot. So it's kind of right now it's turning into a 3-part project. There's one controller that controls a couple of units in the art room and the wrestling gym. That controller needed to be upgraded before we did anything. So we're in the process of replacing that right now. And then the Seago upgrade, which is the big upgrade that we're doing, that's a 2-part project. So the way that it's going to work is we're trying to tie that in also into the HVAC project. So with the new HVAC project, the addition of the cooling coil, the gym, that's going to be new graphics being built for that. Some of the other units, we're going to have to update the graphics. So what he's trying to do is work all that together into one project. The first half will be updating the graphics, updating the controllers, working with Save More on what they need for controls and whatnot. So we're moving along to get that done. We're hoping the controller upgrade that we're doing now, that should be done in the next few weeks. And then they're going to be doing a lot of behind the scenes work on the other upgrade. We were talking that trying to find cost savings in this whole project because it isn't a cheap project. One of the things that we were discussing was the graphics alone. He said that he's seeing at least 100 different points that are redundant. And he's looking at that and saying, if we could get rid of some of these points, get rid of some of these graphics, we don't need all these, that should hopefully drive the cost down. Because it's the labor involved in putting all this together. So we've been working, getting that done, and hopefully in June, July, we should start getting that upgrade. Going forward. We just need to get final numbers from them. Sequel upgrade before we go forward on everything.
So is there a sensor issue as far as like how many sensors are built into it or how many you would want to have, or is it? And then
It's a communication thing. The old controllers are not, they're not Ethernet based. It's the old communication, so they're not reliable. These are going to be, all Ethernet cable. The new system is now going to be web based, so you're not going to use licensing. You're not gonna need to, right now, you're only allowed one operator at a time to be able to log into this and to see what's going on. So if you wanted to log in, I wanted to log in at the same time, you could do it. So now being all web-based, you can have multiple users log in, you don't have to worry about licensing, anything like that. So it's a more friendly system. It eliminates Java, which is another problem with some of these systems that Java just, once Java updates, you can't, you lose everything. And you just gotta get rid of Java and go back to the next version. So it's a lot more user-friendly system. Turns out to be, so. And there's probably some other, benefits as far as the graphics and as far as the points, adding more points, a little bit more flexibility with trend data, able to do more with that, able to do more with alarms and notifications. So it's a better system.
But it sounds, in some ways, similar to our phone problem, where as technology, increases, and then you run into issues like Java or replaceability, that you start to have to replace more often because you're, running into these technological, limits. So,
One of the examples could be like beginning of this year when we had to start pulling trending reports for the CO2 data.
Right.
We actually had to have a representative from Siemens come in and program that and figure out how to get us the reports. Whereas with the newer system, it's a lot easier to do, where our in-house building HVAC tech could just go in there, put in the parameters, what we're looking for, and then it will just upload it and do what we need. So it's a lot better system.
okay. All right, and then roof restoration. I think it's our last one on that list. Right?
So roof restoration, as we've been discussing, we've had,
This is at the high school.
this is at the high school. So just to recap back from October, 2012, we had 21 sections of roof that were restored with a 10-year warranty. As we discussed, that warranties expire on October 11th, 2022. So we had Trumco come out and they did a moisture survey. They did an infrared scan of all 21 sections, trying to figure out where we're at with moisture intrusion. So they did the infrared scan, and then also what they did is there's 4 sections of rubber roof that are 20 to 17 years old that were recommended for restoration. So what we also had them do is come out and put numbers together, what it would cost to restore those roofs. We had, there was that one section above the science area, the decking's in decent shape, but the coping stones are in poor condition, they're eroding and whatnot. So we had them give us quotes on all that. So they did the infrared scan, and they pretty much came up with 951 square feet of wet insulation. There's 13 sections of roof where these wet insulation sections need to be replaced. So what we would need to do is repair the wet insulation. Then once that is repaired, then they would be able to do what they do for the restoration and then give us the 5-year extension on the roof. So they gave us the price on that, and then they gave us the price on the 4 roof restoration that we need to do.
Yeah.
Yes, come back in. Oops.
Thank you.
I could have gotten up, but
That's okay.
So that,
Sideways.
so out of 22 sections, 13 were wet.
Yeah, well, 13 sections, 951 square feet total.
Yeah.
Were wet.
Okay. So they're all different size sections.
They're all different size sections.
And what's the cost on for the 5 years? So you do that and you spend how much for a 5 year, for a 5 more year guarantee?
To repair the wet sections of roof, it's $21,031 to repair that. And then to do the warranty extension, it would be $53,598.50. So it's basically a total price of $74,629.50 for the restoration.
If we didn't do that, then we would have to do as new, and that would cost a lot more. Is that correct?
Substantial amount more, correct.
So that's what catch 22 is.
So the
That's where we get
restoration,
the $1.2 million estimate of having to replace the whole thing. When we had the representatives come out, this process that they're doing, they can continue to do. So in 5 years, they can do it again and extend it 5 years. So it's the total for all the high school sections. It's going to be about 395,000 compared to the 1.2. So we already put aside 495,000 last year. So that would really cover all of the needs for the high school roof and hopefully leave something maybe to start addressing some middle school issues, whatever we choose to, but the whole high school, all of the high school issues and concerns could be addressed for 395,000.
now the ones that need to be restored eventually or restored immediately, those sections, once those are done, those come with a 20-year warranty. Those will be good for 20 years after they get done those ones.
I mean, it may not be the most efficient way to do it sometimes, but if we can repair as we need, I think it's almost better than.
As
having
opposed to
to-
bonding, right?
Right, as opposed to bonding it and then we take care of it as we go versus, spending a huge amount on a big bond and then that's the whole summer, is, roof. And then we leave it alone for a while, but, things happen and you can still have issues and that. So I like the approach of fixing problems as they arise versus.
And one of the problems that we've been chasing there for quite a while has been the whole area of the guidance suite. The guidance conference centers and the nurse's office, continual roof leaks. And they've been chasing and couldn't find it. Last week, the representative from Trumco and myself went up on the roof. They do the infrared scan, they do the moisture test. They spray paint out the areas of moisture intrusion where they found it. And going up there, you see a straight line of all moisture problems all the way down the center of the roof. So looking at that, we kind of feel that this is where the problem's got to be. It's not coming in from the wall. There's what they call a doghouse, which covers some piping that's up there. They were thinking that it might be coming from there. So looking at that, we can now see that this is where the issue is, and he's thinking that over time, the seams opened up for whatever reason. So now, that's actually warranted. So they'll cut those sections out, fix the seams, repair the insulation, replace the insulation, put the gravel back and everything like that. And that'll part that fix. So doing this infrared scan actually turned out to be helpful in seeing where that problem was.
Right, so we spend a little money on the infrared, we get an assessment, some of it's covered by warranty, some of it we have to do ourselves. And we get a little more warranty and we keep going and keep doing it.
Continuing cycle, correct.
Well, and I think the good thing is we already set aside money for this. We were very specific that it was for roof projects. So we already have the money in capital to complete all of the work. And like Terry said, plus actually start some of item G, which is the work for the middle school roofs. And then that really allows the 1% that we would ask for at the end of this meeting to go to some of the other items that we have identified, like the phone systems. So it gives us some flexibility to complete projects and keep everything up to date and running well.
That sounds good. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions on any of the update projects? No? Good, thank you. No. So we'll move on to discussion of possible action of diversity in action signage.
So you have a memo in the packet about this. So I was approached by Mrs. Mann, who had been working with the high school's Diversity in Action Club. And they would, they're considering the installation of a sign on the outside of the high school building at both the front entrance and the back entrance. And the statement in the sign is included in the memo. And, you know, the Board of Ed policy 7551 is really the only policy that talks about specific actions the board has to take with naming facilities. We have signs all over our buildings, but they're all on the inside. So this would be an unusual step to put a sign up on the outside of the building, which is why I wanted to bring it to the board for consideration and approval, because we've never actually done something like that before. And it is kind of, you know, again, it's a slightly different approach, because when they're inside the building, the only people who see it are staff and students and some of the parents who visit. This is very much part of the public. So that is why I'm bringing it for a recommendation for the facilities committee, and then hopefully to the board on Monday. And if we are able to approve it, we can actually have it installed before these kids graduate. So.
Can you talk a little bit about what it is, like what material, where, size?
I can. So it's going to be made by our CTE students. The
Oh, nice.
material is AZAC, which I think is a type of permanent kind of plastic. I'm not quite sure what the dimensions are, but they priced it out at about $250 for the size. And I'm sure that the CTE teachers will have something that's, appropriately sized, that it's not a little plaque and it's not an overwhelmingly huge banner either, but they will be the ones creating it.
I know, like, when you come in the back for sports, but I'm thinking like, it's sort of on the side, where, I just can't picture where they would be, not that, I'm just trying to picture it.
So I think I can't remember if it's over the doors or to the right of them. I can actually ask Mrs.
No, I
Mann.
was just trying to get it in my head, what it might look like. I think it's a great
I
idea.
thought, for some reason, I thought at the front entrance it was to the side, but I can't remember where they thought of putting it on the back entrance.
Well, maybe we'll find out before Monday.
I can definitely find out. I will probably find out before the end of the meeting.
I'm sure you will.
So,
I think it's a nice idea, and I wouldn't have anything to say against it. Yeah, absolutely. Nice reminder every day to see that.
And so it's, at some point, do you want, so I'm just thinking about how, because it'll be outside, so the elements will be picking at it. So at some point, someone will make a recommendation to either update it or change it or.
AZAC technically should last forever, right? It's like the Trek step.
and it definitely, certainly the one in the front, I believe is going to be under the overhang.
Yeah.
So I think that one will be well protected from the elements. I'm not sure where the back one is.
So for consideration, we can certainly talk more about it, but I'm sure that they must have a plan. They know what's going outside, so.
So I don't remember the policy off the top of my head, but is there not a, there's supposed to be like a waiting period and all that based on naming of things. And then this is, so does this open the door for every club to bring forward their request for their particular item?
It certainly could, which I guess is part of why we're presenting it to the board. Well, first to facilities and then potentially to the board for consideration.
Right.
So it could have that could certainly open up that possibility.
But we would have the say to decide if.
If we sort of made this part of our process. And again, I don't think we've ever restricted the signage that's on the inside of the school, because that's sort of private and within the purview of the building administrators. But for the outside, I think we would bring it to the Board of Education. And if I don't know if we'll have an abundance of requests or if this would be the only one. But if we saw that there were a lot coming, we could bring it to policy and have policy, write a policy on how we would manage it.
I can see the concern of all of a sudden having all these signs with
Right.
uplifting statements or whatever, or maybe not.
Not to say that any of them are bad or anything else, it's just the, or any better than one another, it's just the look of the school and sort of how it's, what's approved and what's not approved.
I think the idea is fantastic, but certainly they could, I'm sure they have a mock-up, they just haven't sent it to you yet, or maybe they haven't. Because I was trying to picture out how you're gonna get all those letters on a piece of AZAC, like, I don't know, whatever, maybe that's a 3D printer, but whatever. So probably, because it would have to be to our standard, in terms of pilots.
Yep,
But I love the fact that the students are making it, and this was a student-led initiative. I think that's fantastic.
And most of 7551 is about naming things after.
absolutely. It's
So
all
it's not
about
the same
naming
thing.
facilities.
Right, so it's not exactly
Yeah.
covered.
It's just signage.
Yeah, just be curious to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
From a design standpoint.
So am I hearing that we want to wait to see what it looks like, or do we want to make a motion? And then, and to be part of the motion that we get to see what it looks like, but then it's too late, we already passed the motion.
Is a motion to bring it to the board for approval, or is the facilities, I just don't have it in front of me, I apologize.
Yeah, it's, well, there isn't a motion. Is there a motion here? I think there's a motion to bring it
Yes,
to-
it's to recommend to the board the construction and installation.
Yeah, there's a finance committee and a board of it.
So who would have the final say on the aesthetics of it? I mean, I hate to boil it down to that, but
No,
I mean-
and the practicality, absolutely.
So I would guess that Mrs. Van would probably weigh in with the CTE teachers who probably know what is going to work and what isn't going to work in making the signage. And then, you know, I think we can certainly have a mock-up in time for the board meeting. So we would be able to have
the
a
facilities
vision.
committee to approve it, without seeing it or having a discussion. I also think it might be kind of fun to have a student present it.
We did talk about that, so yes.
That would be great.
I'd hate to hold it up just on that one thing and hope that we could trust Stan to make a good judgment call.
If we didn't push this forward now, it wouldn't happen until June, correct? If we did it this time, it could be up in June before the end of the school year, or is that not even a
The board
consideration?
meetings after the.
Yes, the board meeting happens after graduation. So we would install it and have it for next year, if we put it into June.
So anyway, I'm not, it's neither here nor there for me, but if you wanted to slow it down, I don't think it costs us anything, because it's not gonna, kind of needs to be up for June, for September, really, right? Who's here in the summer, or am I missing it?
So I think the students who proposed it are seniors, so they.
Oh,
are
they would like to see it
hoping
before they
to
go.
Have,
Right, that's what I got that
Yeah.
sense.
Okay, I apologize, I wasn't running. Okay.
And I was just trying to, I don't mind, you know, I would just, I think if we make a motion to bring it to the full board, we include that we want a mock-up or some sort of graphic, you know, at that time. I think that's fine. And then the full board can see it and decide on that point. I don't have a problem. It's not like we're approving it. We can't approve it anyway without the full board. We'll just modify the, make a motion to ask for a mock-up of what it would look like. Just and the size, like sort of. Yeah. And maybe, and where, right? Size and where and what it looks like.
yes.
And so if somebody wants to make that motion.
I'll make the motion, move to recommend to the board the construction and installation of the diversity in action sign at the high school as
Not as presented, but with a,
but with example of prototype or size adjacent aesthetics.
I will second that.
all right,
And,
so.
well, real quick, do we want to put, again, I know the weather, but is there, I mean, do we want to put in sort of like a reconsideration? Or do we want to, is this going to end up being there forever now? Like, do we want to like have it reviewed on a, you know, a 3-year basis or something like that?
I don't know if we could put a time on it,
If
but
there's like wear and tear on it, or
Or just in general,
That's-
or like, what if the club is defunct next year and then we go, well, the club, you know, another club has a different opinion. You know, just trying to look at some way to not put something that will be very hard to take down or change or edit or update, you know, without some backlash. You know, oh, you don't believe in diversity? No, the sign's ripped and we're trying to do it. And we have a new diversity slogan we want to put in. So that's where,
and terminology may change over time. So
Exactly.
the
So
word
just,
diversity maybe will go away.
It
It
will
would be
need that.
wonderful and we'll change the
exactly,
tenor of the sign.
Right.
But I don't think by approving it, we were saying that it's going up in perpetuity. I'm just saying, this is it for now.
right. And we can talk about this full board as well. So if we want to make a motion.
Yeah, it may be possible to think about a way of amending a full board motion that would indicate either some sort of review or that it's not in perpetuity.
It's a tough word for me to say, I'm sorry.
It's okay, what's slowly too. Yeah, and it may be that the Diversity in Action Club reviews it every year as part of the work they do.
Right, for
If it's-
the amount of money, right, it's something that, you know, in 2 years, the new seniors could come and say, we want to update it, we want to do something, we want to really push this point now and do something different. you know?
Yeah.
And so I just want to keep that sort of idea out there. I'll call the vote. Everyone in favor of the moving the proposal of the sign with followed information about what it looks like forward, and I don't think.
Mr.
Oh,
Reed?
there he is. Did you hear all that?
I see an eye, okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Capital plan updates and also in the packet. And then we have just capital non-recurring allocation here and also in the packet. So if we go to the update, which is I think page 6 of the packet. It is, there's a number of things highlighted in yellow. Ms. Lewis, do you want to hit those or you want me to skip the ones in yellow?
Actually, my copy's not highlighted, so.
Mine's black and white.
Yeah. You're just taking, I just giving you a pile of stuff that's highlighted in yellow.
So those are, I think those are things that we're trying to just be very clear that the need for putting aside the 1%, and should the legislation this year decide to make it 2%, which right now that's still going forward, that we obviously have a lot of projects that could benefit by having this money put aside. And because we're constantly looking at our buildings and doing preventive maintenance, the things like the needs here at the middle school roofs, however far we decide to go with them, there's obviously some need that needs to be addressed. Also want to show you that some of the things, the open up the wall on 375 is completed. Last month, the board approved the piping, cooling tower piping bid, so that is going forward. So that's really some of the things that, to really highlight some big items that, are big numbers to include in budgets going forward, but could really benefit, if the board considers putting aside funds. And that's really in also the purpose of, the memo I have in the back is that, it is our intent that, in August, we will ask for at least 1%, perhaps 2%, depending on what the legislation does, depending on what our end of year situation looks like, to address some of these things. And as, we talked about the telephone system, that certainly is one that we would advocate for. And the lecture hall is not a space that we get to use that much because it's just really not designed well and the seats need to be replaced. So that is something that the high school really benefit from. You've heard about the musical instruments at, the middle schools and how old they are. And even at the high school, you hear we're replacing 50-year-old saxes. So Mr. Martoni talked about the Siemens control. So and then, we want to be proactive in, we're doing this wonderful stadium project that, again, we don't look in whether it's 12 years, 14 years and replacing it, that it's another $1 million that we have to go to bat for, but to be proactive and put aside money for that. And then, there's always asphalt and sidewalk repair that we are, we take care of our 3 campuses. So.
On here, the phone system is spread out over a number of years. Does that affect the grant, requesting the?
So when we wrote that in the capital plan,
Yeah.
we did it in the way we did before, that we would be leasing a phone system, and we did that over 3 or 5 years last time. And again, it depends on which way we go, because if you go with cloud-based, you're not leasing it, but you may have that cost. You may have that more cost upfront on a regular basis, but you don't have that, all that hardware that will break and need repair, so.
And when any of those items are in the capital plan, we tend to try to defray the cost over multiple years to keep the total capital budget flat and not have a $150,000 cost all at once.
Right.
If we set aside 1% or 2%, and it's then in the CNR fund for those designated items, you can purchase it all at once and be done with it, but still not impact the operational budget with a big expensive purchase.
Right.
I think we talked about that with the musical instruments, right? There was that possibility of leasing them over multiple years, and it would have been $40,000 a year, and it would have kept everything nice and flat, or we set the money aside and we just go out and buy all the new musical instruments that we need, and now we own them and we have them.
And we can use it for 50 years.
Exactly.
No, I was also saying it from the standpoint of the rebate from the state. If we got 30%, would we want to try to spend that money up front to get that full rebate rather than, look at it? But what we're talking about is spending it all at one time, pretty much.
Yeah, you only can get reimbursed after you have spent the
Right.
funds.
Yes.
Right. That's why I was just thinking, if we try to put some of, like we do one school but not another school, we may lose out on that security rebate money.
And I don't even know if that's an option, the way the system is all working as one.
Yeah, all or nothing. Gotcha. Okay. It was just highlighted and I thought it was, I just wanted to mention it for the granting. From the forecast. Okay. So that's very good. Thank you for the update. Any questions from anyone?
It's actually very helpful meeting, a lot of updates, very helpful, very timely, thank you.
And, the question we didn't ask, which I will say again, with tongue in cheek, on that sign, how much PFAS is on that plastic for those cutting edges that are making it?
Mr. Browdy will get me in trouble, so I am not going to say.
We need a warranty. Oh, he's home.
Yay, Patrick made it home, yay.
Okay, anyone else? Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion
So moved.
to move. All those in favor of adjourning? Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, wonderful.
Thank you.
Sorry.